This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Cases of the viral pneumonia in China continue to grow along with its global impact. We have updates from Beijing, the epicenter Wuhan, and Africa. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the program. In business, Liberia's President George Weah to open up bids for oil and gas exploration. And in sports, basketball fans around the world pay their tributes to Kobe Bryant. We begin with the latest on the coronavirus outbreak. The death toll has reached 106, all within China, while 65 people have recovered. The total number of cases globally has surged to over 4,600, with the vast majority in China. Tibet is the only region in the country without any confirmed cases. Around half of the cases are at the epicenter of the outbreak, that's Wuhan, the capital of Hubei province. More than 40,000 people across the country are under medical observation after having had close contact with infected patients. There are 52 confirmed cases outside China. Thailand has 14, the United States, Singapore and Australia have 5 each. Japan, Malaysia and South Korea have 4 each, and France and Germany each have 1. A Chinese health official says by the end of today, a total of around 6,000 medical personnel will have arrived in Wuhan to help contain the epidemic there. CGTN's Liu Yang has the latest from the top health authority.
The National Health Commission has organized 30 teams of nearly 4,200 medical workers from other provinces sent to Wuhan. Another 1,800 medics will arrive in Wuhan today. The authorities also said the 2 hospitals being built right now in Wuhan are expected to have 2,300 beds and will open on February 2nd and 5th, respectively, and plus other arranged beds from hospitals. In total, the government will arrange roughly 10,000 beds for patients and suspected cases. 7 steering groups sent to cities and provinces like Shanghai, Guangdong, and Sichuan to supervise the jobs of epidemic prevention and control in communities and grassroots medical institutions. We know the medics have also brought supplies to local hospitals, for example, tens of thousands of sets of disposable protective clothing and ethanol and other health supplies.
Well, Hubei province has prepared 5.6 million face masks and 10,000 protective suits for Wuhan. But hospitals in the city say that they are still in need of supplies. Our reporter Sun Tianyuan has more.
Wuhan, the worst hit city of China's coronavirus outbreak. Local hospitals are in dire need for more equipment. Zhongnan Hospital of Wuhan University is one of them.
We hope to receive constant supplies of protection gears to ensure safety of medical workers in the front line so they can better serve the patients.
Yuan says the hospital has stocked over 50,000 face masks, which are critical for the safety of medical personnel. They used more than expected when Zhongnan Hospital became the main fever clinic for the city.
After the outbreak, the hospital consumes 4,000 medical standard masks like this and 3,000 protection suits like this every day. So at this rate, the supplies are running out fast.
As of Monday, Zhongnan Hospital has handed out 61,000 face masks, but by the end of the day, they had completely run out. It's having a huge effect on staff here.
It's really a hard time. My colleague has worked 3 days and nights to maintain the supplies. She only slept 1 hour and had a single meal.
Ge says her hospital has also received donations across the nation, but 90% of those aren't suitable for use in the hospital, so the need remains. Sun Tianyuan, CGTN. Wuhan, Hubei Province.
The head of the World Health Organization says he's confident in China's epidemic prevention and control ability. Dr. Tedros Adhanom met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Beijing today. He said the WHO and the international community recognize the decisive actions taken by the Chinese government to curb the spread of the new coronavirus. He said the WHO does not recommend the evacuation of foreign nationals, and he called on the international community to remain calm and not to overreact. Wang Yi says China appreciates the WHO's support and its affirmation of China's containment measures. Well, Kenya remains on high alert as a passenger from Guangzhou in China has been quarantined after showing flu-like symptoms. The passenger, isolated at the Kenyatta National Hospital, entered the country on Tuesday. Kenya has one of the busiest airports in Africa and has stepped up its surveillance. It's screening all passengers arriving from China. The Kenyan government has warned against travel to China as the outbreak grows. There are at least 85 Kenyans registered with the embassy in Wuhan. The Foreign Affairs Ministry said it is in touch with Kenyans who are stuck in Wuhan and is closely monitoring the situation. Well, CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy joins us now on the phone from Kenyatta National Hospital for the latest. Daniel, what do you know about the passenger on Kenya Airways from Guangzhou quarantined over fears of this new coronavirus?
Well, thank you very much, Karen. We're here at Kenyatta National Hospital where a passenger that traveled from Guangzhou is quarantined at the hospital right here. Officials have confirmed that he is right here and he's being monitored by experts who are looking at him critically to see whether it is a case of coronavirus. Well, but what they're trying to say is that it is not yet confirmed. This is a suspected case that they are monitoring as a hospital, but they cannot divulge more information since he's under quarantine and is being monitored by experts here at Kenyatta National Hospital.
Okay, so Daniel, not a confirmed case at this stage. Is Kenya and indeed the hospital well equipped to deal with the coronavirus?
Well, according to officials here, the people that are monitoring the traveler that came from Guangzhou at international level. So they're saying that experts have been called in to try to monitor and see if this can be contained. And that is if it is confirmed that it is a coronavirus case. So, yes, they're saying that they have all it takes because of the measures that they have put in place. But they're also saying that the Minister of Health is supposed to give more details and information regarding this suspected case that arrived here this morning and is under quarantine. So we are expected to have a press briefing from the Minister of Health, who are supposed to give us exactly what the government of Kenya is doing and what kind of measures are in place and equipment that are in place to handle such cases of coronavirus.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. That was CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy there from Kenyatta National Hospital. Well, South Africa has warned travellers to be alert and to keep up to date with information about the coronavirus. South Africa attracts thousands of Chinese tourists every year. Tourism authorities fear a massive decline as this virus spreads. CGTN's Sumitra Naidu now reports.
The virus is contagious and those who contract it might not even know. It's common in animals and birds and only some spread the disease to humans.
It's a novel coronavirus, so it's a completely new virus that has not been seen before. So at this moment, the data is still being collected and most of the experts are still working on the mode of transmission, how long it's going to incubate for. Some people, they may start to transmit this virus even before they become symptomatic.
Over 100,000 Chinese visited South Africa in 2018. The Department of Tourism is pushing to double this figure by 2021. But this virus has the potential to wipe out all tourism gains and further impact this already weak economy.
South Africa hasn't issued a travel ban as yet, but says it is monitoring the situation closely. China and South Africa are key trading partners. Thousands of Chinese people also live and work here and travel abroad frequently. International SOS is appealing to anyone feeling symptoms to seek assistance immediately.
Currently, there's no treatment, so the treatment will be mainly supportive. So that means, if you have pneumonia or if you need help trying to breathe, then we put you on the ventilator and other medication to help you breathe better.
The timing couldn't be worse for South Africa. This economy too is in poor health, but health authorities say they're prepared.
This virus is spread just like the common cold. So it's when you cough or sneeze, or even when you have any respiratory secretions onto other people. So we are recommending general precautions. So for example, don't touch your face and make sure that you wash your hands regularly with soap and water for at least 20 to 30 seconds at a time. And if you don't have access to water, then carry a small bottle of alcohol hand sanitizer.
International SOS has set up a central website with constant updates on the virus. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg.
The Africa Centre for Disease Control and Prevention says it has identified countries on the continent that it considers highly vulnerable to the spread of the coronavirus from China. Mostly these are countries with frequent flights there. Dr. John Nkengason, the director of the Africa CDC, says they are working closely with vulnerable countries to ensure that they set up a high standard of prevention. CGTN's Coletta Wanjoe reports now from Addis Ababa.
Ethiopia, Egypt and Morocco are some of the countries that the Africa Centre for Diseases Control says have to put more effort to prevent the spread of coronavirus into their territories.
These countries just need to put extra resources to screen, to enable them do more screening at the airport. Say, for example, if you get 1,000 passengers a day at the airport, say in Addis Ababa, you require much more resources to screen the 1,000 passengers coming from China than an airport that receives only a few passengers from China. So that is the implication on the burden on the resources that are required.
The government set up screening at the Pole International Airport in Addis Ababa for passengers on 23rd January. Its national carrier, Ethiopian Airlines, has at least 36 flights to China weekly. It has yet to pronounce itself on the impact the outbreak of the coronavirus has had on its business. The Africa Centre for Diseases Control says the biggest challenge is that the coronavirus has no treatment yet.
Which means people have to wash their hands always. Secondly, when you cough, you have to cover your mouth. Thirdly, that you have to exercise what you call social distancing, which means if somebody feels ill, you isolate yourself. And fourthly, that organizations have to begin to be liberal with the policies to allow people to work from home if they feel like they call in and they report that they are sick.
The African Union will do its first training workshop on the coronavirus in Dakar, Senegal next week, with representatives from 15 African countries being trained on how to diagnose and detect the virus rapidly. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
French Minister of the Armed Forces Florence Parly met with Defense Secretary Mark Esper at the Pentagon on Monday to discuss the issue of terrorism in Africa and the possible reduction of US troops on the continent as part of a worldwide review by Esper. CGTN's Daniel Erikmoy has the details.
Groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS have moved closer to well-populated coastal cities in countries like Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. This has made France very blunt about the urgent need for U.S. military support in the Sahel.
US support in Sahel is really critical to our operations. So in this very particular moment where the head of states of the G5 Sahel and President Macron decided to increase the efforts not only in the military field but also on the political field, it seemed that it's even more necessary to keep this American support. But as I said, we fully understand the process the United States is in. Secretary Esper has a difficult job to handle, how to reorganize the American footprint. So we understand the constraints. So we will try, I'm sure we'll try to find the best decision to accommodate all the constraints, the one we have in Sahel and the one that the United States has worldwide.
The U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper says France has asked other European allies for their support in maintaining peace and stability in the Sahel.
France has been a real leader in the Sahel. I give France great credit for what they've done, their commitment, thousands of soldiers, and of course we've mourned the loss alongside them, and when soldiers have been killed or wounded. And President Macron is taking a very important leadership role there. So. Great effort by France. I think France has reached out to other European allies. I think it's time for other European allies to assist as well in the region, and that could offset whatever changes we make as we consider next steps in Africa.
Esper has made clear the U.S. will not withdraw from Africa entirely, but the French have increased their presence in West Africa. This month, France announced additional troops for its 4,500-strong operation in the Sahel, and last month it carried out its first armed drone strike in the region. Daniel Arap-Moy, CGTN.
On to Libya, and the United Nations is calling for accountability for the attack on a detention centre last July. It wants all parties to the conflict to conduct independent and impartial investigations. 2 airstrikes hit Tajura detention centre in Libya, killing at least 50 people. A new UN report said the actions of officials guarding the detention centre may have contributed to the high death toll. It said guards prevented detainees from fleeing after the first airstrike. The UN also condemned what it called the continued blatant violations of the arms embargo in Libya. Reports suggest that forces loyal to Khalifa Haftar are still carrying out attacks against the UN-recognized government led by Fayez al-Sarraj.
The report concurs with previous UN findings that the airstrikes were likely conducted by aircraft belonging to a foreign state, noting that, quote, it remains unclear whether these air assets were under the command of Libyan National Army or were operated under the command of that foreign state in support of the LNA. The UN mission said that over the last 10 days, numerous cargo and other flights have been observed landing in Libyan airports in the western and eastern part of the country, providing the parties with advanced weapons, armored vehicles, advisors, and fighters. The UN mission condemns these ongoing violations, with the risks plunging the country into a renewed and intensified round of fighting.
We're going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including millions of children in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger need urgent aid. And can the African Union silence guns in Africa by the end of 2020? We look at the issues at stake as the continental body meets in Addis for the latest summit.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. AfricaLive. Find your voice.
Nearly 5 million children in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger will be in need of humanitarian assistance this year. That's according to UNICEF. It links the projection to a surge in violence that has included attacks against children and civilians. The insecurity has created significant barriers for children and families trying to access essential services, food and nutritional supplies. Over 3,300 schools in the three countries have been closed or remain out of use. More than 670,000 children across the region have been forced to flee their homes. UNICEF is currently working with partners to try and mitigate the situation. It's also appealed for $208 million to support its humanitarian response in the Central Sahel for 2020.
7 months ago, we had to flee from our village because armed groups arrived. They killed and took away some of the villagers. We got scared, so we fled and took refuge here in Cairo. I have received support and now I'm at school. We were given textbooks and pens because I didn't have any. Thanks to that, I can study for my future.
An Egyptian court has sentenced 37 people to prison terms ranging from 1 year to life. The defendants have been accused of joining, supporting and funding the Islamic State affiliates in North Sinai. Hundreds of security forces and civilians have been killed in numerous attacks, most of which were carried out in the northeastern part of the country. Here's CGTN's Adel El-Marhouki with more.
The Supreme National Security Court in Egypt has found 37 out of 44 defendants guilty of collaborating or promoting the ideology of the Islamic State, a group that is affiliated to ISIL and is on Egypt's terror list. 8 have been sentenced to life in prison, which in Egypt has a ceiling of 25 years. The rest of the 37 defendants have terms ranging from 15 to just 1 year in prison. 7 were acquitted, including a known Egyptian Premier League football player. Prosecution accused the defendants of establishing terrorist cells in 7 Egyptian cities, among them the capital, Cairo. It accused them of spreading ISIL's extremist ideologies and planning to execute terrorist attacks in Egypt. 2 of the defendants are at large. The trial began in March last year, and the verdict was announced on Monday. The sentences are not final. All defendants have the right to appeal against the verdict in the Court of the Cassation, which can confirm, amend or annul the sentences, while the prosecution has the right to appeal against the acquittals. Adel El-Marhouki, CGTN, Cairo.
In Madagascar, at least 31 people are reported to have died after a week of torrential rains caused heavy flooding in the northwest of the country. About 15 people remain missing, while thousands of others have been displaced from their homes. Infrastructure has also been destroyed, cutting off access to affected areas. Here's CGTN's Chao Ngono with that report.
An intense 6-month rainy season in Madagascar has caused widespread damage. Several regions in the north particularly have been affected. The government declared a state of emergency and is leading humanitarian efforts.
I need food for my children and for me. My children don't have any clothes. We have nothing to wear. I have had to borrow this.
Someone else saved his wife by holding her out of the water. He died and the woman was saved. 2 married people kissed and died together. They were not saved in time. The speed of the canoe is limited because there is no motor. Our speedboat is the canoe.
The destruction of homes and key infrastructure has been reported in multiple places. Flooding has also affected rice plains and lowlands used to grow crops, threatening the food security in the north. Desperate residents are surviving on as little as fish swimming through the flood waters.
The food and everything else is in the water. They left everything behind. The main thing is to survive. Now we have launched an appeal on television and with donors.
Hopeful fishermen and rice farmers have resulted to floating around in their canoes, trying to rescue some of their belongings from their homes. But with disaster comes the threat of insecurity.
We have no choice but to stay here. It's only the women and the children that go to the shelter. At night we sleep here, even though there are thieves who come by canoe, and they take everything they see that can be sold.
President Andry Rajoelina is visiting the affected northwestern regions to assess the situation on the ground. He promised to deliver foodstuff, medicines, as well as set up mobile clinics in the region. Chomgono, CGTN.
To Zimbabwe now. City authorities there have had to shut down water supplies for 4 days a week. That's to cope with a sharp fall in reservoir levels caused by the country's worst drought in years. This has forced residents to source untreated water at open wells and boreholes, risking their lives. CGTN's Fane Wakatuya with the details.
The laborious search for water is the order of the day for some of Harare's residents who haven't had regular tapped water supplies for close to a decade. Despite promises by city fathers to improve the situation, there's been none.
At present, they tell us that they are pumping around 450 megaliters a day. Unfortunately, 60% of that treated water is being lost along the water distribution network through leakages and illegal connections. So as ratepayers, what we find disturbing is their lack of acceptance of their full responsibility for the provision of social services like water.
An aging pipe network and shortages of treatment chemicals, both of which the municipality can't fix because of financial constraints, mean Harare residents may have to live with the challenges for a while longer.
We are not getting enough money from the consumers of our services because people are not paying. Right now we are owed almost close to $1 billion, over 900 million, which we are owed by our customers. So if that money were to be paid, it means the city would be able to fund its mandates.
The city insists the capital's water is safe.
Our water is very good, our water meets standards, our residents are drinking it and they are alive.
But not everyone here is drinking the intermittently available water.
I'm afraid of rust because our pipes, they are too old now. So I think it's not safe. Maybe if I can boil it first, yeah. If I boil it first, because I don't know if they are chemicalizing the water or they are not. But it's not safe.
His fears could be justified. When heated up, a thick film of residue forms on the surface of council-supplied water. And even after it's brought to the boil, particles of debris are still swirling in this water. It's not known what impact they might have if consumed, but whatever it is, it can't be good. The city recently suspended 4 water engineers on charges that include neglect of duty, part of a drive to address the long-running service deficiencies. Fane Wakatuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The African Union has faced many challenges in 2019 as conflicts old and new continue to evolve across the continent. It's currently meeting for its 33rd session in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, under the banner of Silencing the Guns. CGTN's Giram Chala takes a look at some of Africa's ongoing peace and security issues.
So much has happened in Africa in 2019, from the good news of better economic performance and relative political stability to worsening peace and security situations, all were witnessed. Of all, the ongoing crisis in Libya stands out, and political solution is key to resolve the problem.
Peace support operations cannot on their own be an effective tool to deal with the resolution of conflicts. And again, the Peace and Security Council has pronounced itself on the integration of the various tools at its disposal to ensure that there is momentum in trying to resolve these conflicts. There's still a lot to be done, of course, in terms of ensuring that we don't stay long periods in mission areas. There are serious discussions about that, and how these PSOs can create the space for state entities in the countries where we deploy these forces to have the ability to be able to take over responsibilities, their responsibility as a state.
Then there is the situation in Somalia. AMISOM's withdrawal plans seem to be delayed as Somalia is expected to take over from the Pan-African forces.
The Somalia we have today is not the one that we deployed in 2007. There's been a lot of progress. There's been an evolution in terms of the state, its capacity, its role, its geographical cover, and all related matters. And therefore, the PSOs, it's only making sense that they should also be evolving in terms of how they are structured and when they are supposed to be living.
It is under all of these unresolved peace and security issues at hand that the African Union will be holding its 33rd Assembly in just a matter of days. The theme this year is silencing the guns by 2020.
It is cause for concern when we're seeing, if I might use the word, new conflicts flaring up. There is cause for concern as to how we need to ensure that these conflicts do not flare up. In terms of numbers, some statistics are showing that the number of conflicts, if they are numbered, are actually coming down. But it is worrying that even though it is coming down, some of them seem to be longer. They seem to be surviving long periods of effort. So it is therefore imperative that we use the overall tools within the African peace and security architecture.
It was not, however, all gloomy in Africa in 2019. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, was one of the positive highlights of the year. On the other hand, at least 7 countries will hold their national elections this year in Africa. Some still worry about nations' handling of polling processes. On the economic front, Africa is facing tough challenges. Experts say the US-China trade dispute has made matters even worse. The AU heads of state and government are hoped to address all these challenges against time. Grumtala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
All of the business news coming up for you after the break, including Liberia's President George Weah to open up bids for oil and gas exploration. And Zimbabwe's government turns to UAE to help rebuild the struggling economy. Egypt has signed 2 deals with ExxonMobil for oil and gas exploration in the Mediterranean, the Petroleum Ministry said on Tuesday. The exploration deals include a minimum investment of $332 million, that's according to the ministry. ExxonMobil Corp acquired more than 1.7 million acres for exploration offshore in 2019. It strengthened its portfolio in the eastern Mediterranean. Operations at the 1.2 million North Marakia offshore block, located about 5 miles off Egypt's northern coast, and 543,000 acres in the northeast El Amriya offshore block in the Nile Delta, are scheduled to begin in 2020. Nigeria had no warning from Washington that it could be added to the list of countries subject to a US travel ban. Information Minister Lai Mohammed said adding such a move from the US would be hasty and send the wrong signal to investors. US President Donald Trump said he would add more countries to his travel ban list. While he gave no details, a source familiar with the proposal said the tentative list included 7 nations: Nigeria, Belarus, Eritrea, Kyrgyzstan, Myanmar, Sudan and Tanzania. Mohammed said while Abuja had reached out to the US administration since learning about the plan, his government did not get any warning and had not been told any possible reason. Nigeria, Africa's largest economy and most populous country, is a US anti-terrorism partner and has a large diaspora residing in the United States. To Zimbabwe now, where the government is looking to the United Arab Emirates in a bid to sell a stake in the national oil infrastructure company of Zimbabwe. The country is grappling with a rapid decline in economic growth after it contracted by more than 6% in 2019. Zimbabwe hopes to secure investments that would spur economic growth as inflation soars past 500%. The country's currency has also depreciated by more than 90% against the dollar since the abolishment of the one-to-one peg in February 2019. Liberian President George Weah announced on Monday that the West African country will launch a call in April for bids to resume offshore oil and gas exploration after years of stagnation. After 2 years in office, Weah recalled how he had promised to promote oil and gas exploration as a potential source of revenue for the poor country.
President Weah made his annual national address, during which he said the amendments to the law on petroleum passed last year hold great possibilities for oil exploration for Liberia.
My fellow Liberians, I am pleased to announce to you today that the Government of Liberia, through the Liberia Petroleum Regulatory Authority, will open up the entire Harbour Basin during the next lesson round beginning in April.
The basin where the 9 new blocks are located is part of the last region off the coast of Western Africa, which is yet to be explored for potential reserves.
9 offshore blocks will be put up, allowing competent and reputable international oil and gas companies to bid with the hope of recommencing exploration program.
Since the departure of Exxon and Chevron from Liberia in 2016-2017, there have been no exploration work offshore Liberia, and the sector has been hanging on by a thread. Liberia's last bid round was concluded in December of 2014 with over $60 million in commitments, but concluded unsuccessfully due to political wrangling between the executive and the legislative branches of government. Experts say the importance of Liberia's next bid round cannot be overstated and will determine all future successes for Liberia's fledgling oil sector that has suffered the waves of back-to-back civil conflict. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
The fear of a further spike in inflation has compelled the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria to adopt a tightening stance by raising the cash reserve ratio for banks in the country from 22.5% to a new level of 27.5%. Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele says the move will mop up excess liquidity in the Nigerian economy and check rising inflation, which has been on an upward trajectory since August last year. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more on that.
With Nigeria's inflation on a steady rise over the past 4 months, something needed to be done to check it before it spiraled out of control. And that's exactly what the Monetary Policy Committee did, responding by jacking up the cash reserve ratio from 22.5% to 27.5%. Nigeria's current inflation rate is at 11.98%, partly blamed on insecurity in some parts of the country and the closure of the country's border.
Monetary policy felt compelled that we need to begin to look at what can be done to reverse the trend of this rising level of inflation and prices. And hence, the committee felt in its wisdom that realizing that there's a lot of liquidity in the market, there was a need for the bank to do something to mop the excess liquidity to a level that it considers optimal to be able to run the economy in a way that the level of excess liquidity does not become injurious to the economy.
Last year, Nigeria's central bank raised the loan-to-deposit ratio for commercial banks to 65%. Some fear the MPC decision to raise the CRR and mop up liquidity in the banking system could have a negative consequence on commercial banks' ability to lend and thereby defeat the whole essence of the LDR initiative.
Deposit money banks must be compelled, like we are using prudentials, to ensure that they continue to grant loans to the private sector of the economy. And committee felt that, yes, whereas we're trying to remove the excess liquidity from the market so as to operate within an optimal level of liquidity that is needed for the economy, that the CBN should continue to push on the loan deposit ratio, since that was already giving us the kind of results that we expect.
With Nigeria's reserve dwindling in recent months and inflow of foreign capital slowing down, some analysts had been forecasting a possible currency devaluation at some point this year. But the CBN governor is resolute that there's nothing like that in the offing.
A reserve level of about 38 today, right? And crude price at above 57, 60, 65, sometimes hit 70. We believe that we will be able, and we are saying that we should continue to sustain the existing FX, foreign exchange management and stability that we've seen in the market. There's no need for anybody to ever think that an adjustment would happen.
Everything hinges on the price of crude. Should there be a sudden crash in price below the budget benchmark of $57, then devaluation might become inevitable. But the Monetary Policy Committee also warned that the country needs to check its rising debt level and look at other ways of raising revenue to drive the economy. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
South Africa's iron and steel industry has come under immense pressure. This comes after ArcelorMittal announced it's finalised the retrenchment of 1,000 workers at its Saldanha operations in the Western Cape. CGTN's Angelo Coppola has more.
The retrenchments have been in the pipeline for some time now, with the country's Trade and Industry Minister, Ibrahim Patel, trying to convince the company to sell the export-oriented Saldanha steel operation in an attempt to salvage those jobs.
When you look at the situation realistically, it was impossible that AMSA were going to sell out to a competitor. Also, the market structure in which we have and the way in which they are protected means that they are able to dictate prices, able to dictate supply. So I don't think that they would have given up anything to try and diminish their market share in the steel industry itself.
The sector is reeling following another announcement from AMSA, the primary steel manufacturer, on Sunday.
Two trade unions yesterday from AMSA that they are shedding another 400 positions at their Newcastle plant and the Vereniging plant. Main reasons being that they're relooking their footprint, optimizing the plants. We were expecting this. They've shared an indication early or late last year that they will go through all their plants and optimize.
While these job losses are directly attributable to AMSA, the players are also suffering, retrenching in 2019. And downstream value chain impacts will be severe too.
A lot of the positions at Tridents, the Max Steels, etc., a lot of positions were shed there as well. The figures I'm not sure of now, but there's a lot of jobs being shed downstream as well.
The DA is calling for government to remove some of the safeguard duties that protect AMSA from local competition.
We need to make sure that where there's capital expenditure that AMSA have committed to, that the ministry holds them to account and make sure that they spend that money to upgrade their plants and obviously make their operation more competitive.
One of the steel industry associations says that the steel and manufacturing sectors need urgent interventions, not long-term plans.
We have the designation requirement. That is somewhere where we think there's a quick win for industries, because government procurement is big business. It's about 983 billion rands that's been spent annually on procurement. So we think if we enforce designation, it's going to help local industry.
This latest round of job shedding or retrenchments doesn't augur well for the iron and steel and manufacturing sector. In fact, it could be the death knell. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Centurion, South Africa.
We're going to a short break now. Still to come. We look at how Egyptian parents cultivate children's interest in science. Egypt now, where parents are keen to give their children a unique learning experience during the upcoming winter break. At the Water Science Museum for Children, the eager students learn science through experimenting with various objects. Here's Adel El Mahrouhi with more.
Far from the noise and pollution of Cairo, on the outskirts of the Egyptian capital, where the beauty of nature strikes the eye, the Water Science Museum for Children lies. Built in 1843, this place originally aimed to record the evolution of irrigation in Egypt. In recent years, the museum revamped its content to attract more visitors.
All the experiments we have studied from elementary school to university are presented here in the form of games. We're breaking the mold from the usual educational platform available in schools. We get the kids out of the school buildings in order to learn. Students engage with all their senses, which makes these experiments stick in their minds.
128 educational models are available in 8 different parks here. The museum is one of Egypt's efforts to make learning sciences attractive to students. Some models are designed as puzzles, others require children to come up with their own creative solutions, usually for challenges Egypt faces.
I'm very lucky to live nearby. I bring my kids frequently. The museum gives a unique experience to the kids every time they come. I follow the activities online and come whenever there is something interesting going on. I hope more people would come here. It's unfortunate that this place is not so popular.
With an entry ticket of just 60 US cents, this museum is designed to be a year-round attraction, affordable for all Egyptians.
I love this museum. I have come here many times before. I play with the same experiments and never get bored. And with every visit, I discover that there is more to this place. My favorite is weighing the planets and the moons. I learn things my friends would not usually know about.
Right next to the famous Nile barrages, the museum also exposes its visitors to a great botanical collection. The 8 acres garden attached to it includes rare plants and perennial trees. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, staying in Cairo, an entrepreneur has become the talk of the town because of his traditional dyed fabrics. Salama Mahmoud's workshop is a multicoloured hive filled with all kinds of fabric used for making shoes, rugs and drapes. Cairo has been home to historic dye shops for many decades, but now only a handful remain following the entry of foreign products into the textile market. The rise in dye prices has also taken a toll on the niche industry as textile entrepreneurs try to stay competitive.
The yarns that come to us are used in home sewing, knitting, kilim, carpets and wool used in the manufacturing of t-shirts. The work here does not stop. We are the only workshop in Egypt that still dyes by hand.
In a popular store in Al-Azhar, in the heart of Islamic Cairo, a wool sweater sells for £200. But you can find something similar on the street that's made in China for £30.
All of the sports news coming up after the break, including basketball fans around the world pay their tributes to Kobe Bryant.
How would you create your legend? On the field,